Buenos días a todos. Bienvenidos al primer panel de esta mañana, preparándonos para una mayor competencia en el mercado de Estados Unidos, retos y oportunidades para la región CAFTA-DR. Con el permiso de ustedes, ya que dos de mis panelistas hablan inglés, voy a proceder a dar mis palabras en inglés. También Karin nos hizo el favor de hacer su presentación en inglés para facilitar la comprensión de todos, pero obviamente a la hora de las preguntas y demás tenemos interpretación simultánea para los que necesiten poder dar seguimiento. Aquí es un honor realmente para nosotros contar con la presencia de los tres, porque en este panel creo que vamos a tener una perspectiva bastante amplia. En primer lugar, queremos entender desde el punto de vista de los que conocen CAFTA, que tienen 10 años de trabajar bajo este tratado, cómo están viendo el nuevo acuerdo versus lo que estamos teniendo nosotros en la región. Hemos tenido el honor de trabajar con Bill Jasper, no solo por sus operaciones en El Salvador, pero él estaba liderando el esfuerzo de la industria americana textil durante toda la negociación. Entonces conoce de primera mano lo que el TPP significa, no solo para la industria de Estados Unidos, sino que para sus socios en la región CAFTA-DR. Y podemos dar fe que durante todo ese proceso siempre estuvieron muy abiertos a escuchar las necesidades de los empresarios centroamericanos, cuáles eran nuestras preocupaciones y tratar de siempre llevar la voz de Centroamérica en esa importante negociación. Por parte de John, no es primera vez que lo tenemos en El Salvador, también conoce mucho el quehacer de Centroamérica y de El Salvador en específico. Quisiéramos de tu parte que nos dieras un poco de perspectiva de cómo ves la implementación del tratado. We want to have your perspective, John, I'm sorry, I'm going to go to English, on how you view the implementation of TPP. Is it something that's going to come soon, or is it going to take some time? I think one of the issues that we've been addressing here in El Salvador and Central America is, how much time do we have to be prepared, for what's coming next? And I was telling the audience, Bill, that we've been working with you for a long time, not only because of your operations in the region, but also because you were leading the effort on behalf of NCTO during the TPP negotiations. And your organization was always open to receiving the Central American and Dominican Republic delegation, listening to our concerns and trying to transmit them to the U.S. government. So we are very appreciative of that effort, and we want to hear firsthand how you see the negotiation coming out. What was achieved for the U.S. industry and your partners in Central America. And on behalf of Karen, I think that it's important to put into context, we've been working with the U.S. industry, U.S. government on sharing our concerns on TPP. How does the region feel that we came out? And as we speak of, what are the opportunities that are coming up, maybe you can give the audience an idea of, is the region preparing itself for the next step? So without further introduction, Bill, if you could please give us your presentation. We have around 10 minutes for each panelist, and then we're going to have a couple of questions, and then the audience can jump in. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna. I appreciate it. As she said, I'm the chairman CEO of Unify, and I'm here as a representative for NCTO, but also as a member of Camtex. I think it's important to know that Unify has invested and will continue to invest in Central America, because we do view Central America as being an area of opportunity for growth. I'm going to talk a little bit about TPP, and I'm not going to get too technical, but I may get a little technical, and I apologize for that. I also may not be able to move anything here. Here we go. One question I've been asked many, many times is, why did the U.S. textile industry offer support for TPP? And is it good for the U.S. textile industry? Is it good for the region? And let me start by being very honest. There's no agreement with Vietnam in it that's going to be good for the region, okay? I mean, eventually Vietnam is going to take some share from the region. The question is how much damage is going to be done. This was the first time in my experience that the administration gave the textile industry in the U.S. an opportunity to participate in the negotiations, to essentially have a seat at the table. This has not happened before, to my knowledge, and I think it was a tremendous opportunity for the U.S. textile industry to have some influence on what happened. There's a saying in the U.S., I don't think it translates very well, it's probably not funny in Spanish, but if you don't have a seat at the table, you're probably going to be on the menu. We chose to have a seat at the table. And I think because of that, we got an agreement here that the industry can support. And let me give you a little bit of detail on that. First, there were some key provisions that were very important to the industry that did get included. First and foremost is a yarn-forward rule of origin with very few exceptions. So yarn-forward is included in this for almost all products, almost everything that's associated with Central America. Now, there is a short supply list, and I've heard concerns about the short supply list. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about it, but let me just state a couple facts. First of all, a short supply list is what's in short supply for the region that's made up in the trade pact. So there are going to be things in TPP that are made in CAFTA, because CAFTA is not part of TPP. However, there were great pains taken to make sure that there was very little impact on CAFTA when the short supply list was put together. And that's the reason it's so long. It's so long because there were many breakouts to 8 digits and sometimes 10 and 12-digit HTS codes to be very specific about what is covered in the short supply list. In many cases, actually, it's for specific end uses only. And for the most part, anything that may be sensitive to CAFTA that's on the short supply list is still going to be covered by duties, because it's still going to be in the X basket. You really need to study it line by detail to see what was put in there, but I think you'll find that the short supply list is not a major threat to this region. Now, one other point I'll make is it's a closed short supply list. Nothing's going to be added to it. And I know there's been a lot of discussion by people here in Washington about changing that short supply list. It's not going to change. So, I mean, it's just not. But it's not going to be increased either. Secondly, extended duty phase-out for items that are sensitive to the region. And if you look at the X basket, and I think most people here understand the X basket, but if you don't, just a quick description. Duties on these items will drop by anywhere from 35% to 50% day one, but then be held for 10 years for knits, 12 years for wovens. If you look at what's in the X basket, it makes up about 52% of Vietnam trade to the U.S., but more importantly, makes up 81% of CAFTA trade to the U.S. And the A and B basket, if you think about it, the A and B basket pretty much is items that are very important to China. So one of the things the administration did was try to structure this deal so Vietnam and the retailers and importers in the U.S. had incentive to take share from China. Now, is that going to work every single time? I'm sure it's not. But I think what you're going to find is a lot of the impact of TPP is going to be China losing share to Vietnam and other countries in TPP, and probably not as much in CAFTA. Is there somewhere I should be aiming this? Here we go. Okay. at this level, at the Camtex level, a lot more cooperation amongst all the countries, because there are capabilities in Honduras that complement capabilities here in El Salvador and vice versa. We unify, sell across all countries, but I really do believe there needs to be more cooperation amongst all of the countries in CAFTA, because I do believe you're a much more formidable competitor if you're working together. And I also think you need to do a lot more promoting the region. I don't think we do near enough promoting this region. I was at the Magic Show a couple weeks ago, and I saw 2 booths from Central American countries, and they were not all that impressive, because I don't remember which countries they were, to be quite honest. I saw 10 booths from Egypt. I saw 100 booths from China. There's a lot of countries that are promoting themselves to the retailers and the brands, and there's a lot of countries that aren't, and frankly, we're not doing a very good job here in CAFTA. Now, I don't know if Magic's the right show to go to, or the Material World show that used to be in Miami, but I do think this industry needs to take a much more aggressive approach to promoting itself, to promoting its capabilities and promoting its innovation and promoting what it can do to the U.S. retailers and brands. Because you've got a lot to offer, and I don't think we're getting near the growth here that we could have if we did a better job promoting ourselves. So I'm going to kind of leave it at that, and I'll certainly answer any questions later that you may have. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bill. John, please take the podium. As I was saying, John is an internationally known trade expert with a lot of expertise in customs issues, and among the sectors that he's worked on the most is textiles and the CAFTA agreement. So we give you the floor, John. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Camtex, for inviting me to participate in the program. I wanted to say, I love El Salvador, but I was afraid I'd sound too much like Donald Trump, but I do. I could be wrong here, but I think that most of the people in the room would be just as happy, thank you very much, if TPP never happened. But it is, or it may. But I'll say this. For about the last 3 years, I've told clients and seminar audiences that, for what it was worth, I thought TPP would come to pass. I suggested, though, that because of the political climate in the United States, that it probably wouldn't go into effect until sometime after the next president was inaugurated. Now I'm not so sure. Now that the United States presidential nominating process has descended into chaos, I'm not so sure, and I've lowered my expectations such that I now believe that it's entirely possible that TPP may not pass in the United States at all. Now why do I feel that way? This is the first time since the Carter administration that not a single leading candidate for the United States president supports a pending trade agreement. Hillary Clinton told us last October that she has changed her mind and no longer supports it. And about a week ago, she told Anderson Cooper on CNN that I want to look into the eyes of Americans and say that TPP will help raise your wages, and I concluded that I could not. Look, free trade agreements don't raise wages. They do a lot of other good things, but they don't raise wages, and if that is Hillary Clinton's standard, I suppose she'd continue to support it. Now, Bernie Sanders, who has about a snowball's chance in my microwave, but still, Bernie Sanders has never voted for a free trade agreement and really means it. He says the TPP is a disaster. Of the Republican Party side, Ted Cruz, that great American, says that he voted against TPA, which isn't entirely true, but that he intends to vote against TPP. And then there's Donald Trump. Deep breath. The incompetence and dishonesty of President Obama and the Congress are about to place American jobs and the very livelihoods of Americans at risk. The only entities that will benefit from the TPP are China and Japan and big corporations in America, which are evidently all bad things. But even in the Congress, the atmosphere is at the very least lukewarm. Speaker Ryan says that he doesn't have the confidence that they can bring it up to a vote in the Congress. And Senate Majority Leader McConnell says, I still have serious problems with what I think TPP is, and there is significant pushback all over the place. And indeed, there really is. There's still big controversies in the automotive industry, in pharmaceuticals, intellectual property, tobacco, the list is there. Each of these factions has strong representation in the Congress, and there is some serious opposition to TPP. But to the credit of the USTR, this is the first time of any U.S. free trade agreement that textiles is not a last-minute sticking point. There isn't a lot of controversy about the textile provisions of the TPP. Well, the train wreck will be, and it's entirely possible, that Donald Trump is elected President of the United States, the Republicans lose the Senate. This could happen because of the 34 seats that are up for re-election in the United States Senate this year. 24 of them are held by Republicans, and about 9 or 10 of those seats are vulnerable. They could lose to Democrats. If the Democrats take over the House, and if their standard bearer is Hillary Clinton, and if Hillary Clinton is not promoting TPP, look here, Democrats in the Congress have not been so supportive of free trade agreements even in the best of times. And if Hillary Clinton doesn't get on board, they might not want to stick their necks out for some time to come. The wild card, though, is a different free trade agreement. There is a different free trade agreement being negotiated in Asia right now. It includes many of the TPP countries. It also includes India and China, and it does not include the United States. It could come to pass as early as 2017, and it could leave the United States on the sidelines in Asia. If that happens, business interests in the United States may complain loudly enough that no matter who's president and no matter what is the atmosphere in the US Congress, the TPP could come to pass after all. For what it's worth, I think it's entirely possible that if TPP comes to pass, in answer to Johanna's question, it may be sometime closer to the next midterm elections in the United States in 2018 or beyond. But I don't think you're worried about the TPP because you're afraid or concerned about competition with Australia or New Zealand or the Sultanate of Brunei. I think you're worried about the elephant in the room, which is Vietnam. And you have some reason to. Vietnam is already a formidable exporter of garments to the United States, even without any free trade agreement, and its growth continues no matter what happens to the TPP. The TPP rules of origin are slightly more strict than CAFTA's. There are all yarn-forward provisions with only, as Bill mentioned, 2 exceptions, babies, garments, and brassieres. But as Bill also pointed out, there are a lot of short supply yarns and fabrics that give the effect of single transformation, even though the rule of origin is based on yarn forward. CAFTA, on the other hand, has lots of single transformation rules written right into CAFTA. Boxer shorts, pajamas, girls' dresses, some women's cotton coats and dresses, a number of items for which we can use foreign non-CAFTA fabrics with somewhat more flexibility than Vietnam will be able to do. And of course, the biggest difference between TPP and CAFTA is that under TPP, duty rates in the United States for garments do not become free right away, as they did under CAFTA. Instead, TPP, for garments anyway, has 8 different tariff elimination staging categories that push out and delay the movement of US duty rates down to free, which presumably gives us the window of opportunity to continue to continue to compete effectively with Vietnam. I'll use a couple of specific examples to show how these work rather than the bigger picture basket categories. I've picked, perhaps imperfectly, some particular classifications of garments that are relevant in El Salvador. For brasiers, for which the duty rate in the United States is presently 16.9%, they fall in tariff elimination category US 11, for which the duty is reduced by 50% on entry into force of the TPP and then becomes free at year 13. Cotton socks, presently dutiable in the United States at 13.5%, are in staging category US 6, for which the duty is reduced by 35% when TPP enters into force and then becomes free at year 11. Men's cotton knit shirts are pushed out in a 2-stage reduction schedule. First, duties are reduced by 35% and then by another 15% at year 6, and they become free at year 11. Men's underwear t-shirts are treated the same way as men's cotton knit shirts, and cotton trousers are in staging category US 7, where duty is reduced by 35% when TPP comes into force and become free at year 13. Look, these staging categories are really a little complicated, and for your product and your competitive or your relative competitive station with Vietnam, they bear very careful study, and which particular classifications fall in which particular staging category that interests you make a big difference to your evaluating the risk presented by TPP. One of the most controversial of the provisions of TPP involves men's cotton dress shirts. For most TPP countries, they're in staging category US 11. They don't become free for 13 years. But for Malaysia and Vietnam, they fall in staging category EIF, which means they go duty-free on entry into force right away. And they will cover traditional men's dress cotton shirts in these listed classifications, 2 of which are for men's and boys made with cotton fabric of different colors in the warp and weave, and the other 2 are for other traditional men's dress shirts categories. But it turns out the TPP also gives Malaysia and Vietnam this leg up for other classifications of woven shirts in subheading 6205-2020, and it's really a little complicated because although TPP says that in order for these shirts to enjoy immediately duty-free treatment from Vietnam and Malaysia, they still must be appropriate for wear on business or social occasions when some degree of formality is required. But nevertheless, those other classifications are for shirts other than men's shirts. There'll be some settling to be had. There'll be perhaps some mischief as people make dress shirts in Vietnam with more non-traditional fabrics that may or may not fall within that subjective standard for the degree of formality required of business and social occasions. If you're cynical, if you're hard-hearted, I suggest that the strategy for men's dress shirt producers in the CAFTA region is to find something else to produce and get out of Vietnam's way. TPP short supply includes 194 short supply yarns and fabrics, some of which only last for 5 years. Unlike CAFTA short supply, TPP short supply, as Bill pointed out, does not include a provision for adding new short supply designations. Wisely or otherwise, the United States and the other TPP countries did not provide for changes to TPP. Maybe this presents some continuing opportunity for CAFTA garment producers as new technology evolves, as new fabric, like performance outerwear fabrics and other fabrics come into play. Perhaps there's opportunity for further short supply designations that CAFTA has the flexibility to introduce, but the TPP does not. Now, you know, I've heard the question so often that I'm delighted to try to answer it in public. Some folks said, well, golly, there's a lot of fabrics, including dress shirt fabrics, by the way, so that not only are they duty-free immediately from Vietnam, but a lot of those dress shirt fabrics are on the TPP short supply list so that Vietnam can produce those shirts with fabric from anywhere in the world. And some folks said, well, gee whiz, why not CAFTA? Why can't we just take that TPP short supply list, go to the Department of Commerce and say, me too. Let's add all the TPP short supply yarns and fabrics to CAFTA. It's a swell idea. I think it could make a lot of sense, but I don't think it will happen. And again, for the reason Bill said, the short supply consideration made in the negotiation of TPP was about whether fabrics and yarns were in short supply in the TPP region only. And as you know, in order to get a new designation for short supply under CAFTA, you have to go through a process that ensures or that satisfies the Department of Commerce that that yarn or fabric is in short supply in the CAFTA region, which includes, of course, Central American countries that played no part in short supply under TPP. It's a great question, but I'm afraid the answer is complicated. Other TPP differences, just like CAFTA, TPP has chapter rules for sewing thread and narrow elastic fabrics, but unlike CAFTA, TPP has no visible lining chapter rule, and it has no pocket bag fabric visible lining rule that we're all familiar with under CAFTA. TPP does have a relatively harsh fiber forward origin rule for acrylic sweaters and pullovers that doesn't appear in CAFTA. TPP offers Vietnam a earned import allowance program sort of reminiscent of the earned import allowance program under CAFTA for the Dominican Republic, but with a lot of differences, including how stingy or liberal it is. But otherwise, there aren't any tariff rate quotas or other special deals under TPP, as there are under CAFTA. So what will happen? Will the low labor costs in Vietnam just bulldoze Vietnam through the TPP so that even the small reductions in duty give Vietnam the advantage that allows it to take a lot of our business away in Central America? Will our old favorites in CAFTA, proximity to the United States, shorter transit time, and lower freight costs, continue to serve CAFTA countries' interests as it competes for that United States apparel market? Who knows? But I think that everyone here in the room needs to study the tariff elimination schedules under TPP very closely to see how soon or how long from now your competition in Vietnam will finally achieve duty-free status. I think you similarly need to check out that short supply list under the TPP to see whether competitive fabrics might intrude on your business such that Vietnam makers can use fabric from all over the world while you're still constrained by CAFTA to use only CAFTA region fabrics. We need to study, we need to react, we need to rely on so many of the other things that the former panel talked about innovation and partnership and technology, and keep doing what we do so well, producing good, solid, high-quality garments for the United States market for 10 more years after this 10th anniversary of CAFTA's implementation. Well, there you have it. I'm out of ammo and time, so I'll turn the program over to the next guy. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, John. And now for our last panelist, Karine de Leon. She's the Executive Director of Secatec, the Central American Council and the Dominican Republic Textile and Apparel Associations. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much, Johanna and Camtex, to invite us. It will be very hard to try to speak after John and Bill because they are so good speakers, and I will try to do it well. Well, before to comment something about TPP and the concerns of the region and the things that we think have to do to get that thing, I want to mention briefly what's going on in the region, what happened in the region since CAFTA agreement get into force 10 years ago. In 2007, even has only 6 months of the agreement, we can see 30% of our exports to the United States using the CAFTA benefits. Of course, 10 years later, we can see the difference. It's 75% of our export is using the CAFTA benefits. Of course, if we review country by country, we can see more difference. For example, El Salvador last year, the 90% of the exports are using the CAFTA benefits. Regarding the type of fabric in which the region has focused, we didn't see a radical change because at the end, more than 80% of our export is oriented in knit products. Maybe the difference is when we see the type of fiber that the region has been used. It is clear that has been the transformation of the CAFTA managed to do in the region because the garment of man-made fiber growth 37% compared what did before the CAFTA agreement. And I think this is definitely the big difference and the advantage of our region right now is not only of investment that we already have right now, but also is a part of the integration that we already have with the US industry. In the last 3 years, the CAFTA region followed very close the TPP negotiations. Of course, we need to know what the treaties could represent for our region. And that Bill and John mentioned, of course, the big elephant is Vietnam. If we saw the numbers, 10 years ago, Vietnam practically doesn't appear like the top apparel supplier in the United States. Of course, now it's so different. They export more than the CAFTA region made, and they increase very quickly their export to the United States. And maybe the problem is Vietnam is compete with the CAFTA countries on the same products that we sell to the United States. During the CAFTA, during the TPP negotiation, as Johanna mentioned, we work very close with the US textile industry. And of course, I'm sure that we minimize the impact of the results of the negotiation. Having achieved, of course, the yard forward rule, the most of products that we export was in the X basket, only a few products was in the single transformation rule, but of course, is several issues that continue to concern to us. One of them is the initial cut of 30% of the duty, especially in some products, for example, knit cotton sweaters, men's boys, woven dress shirts, or women's or girls' woven trousers. We know very well that our country is not cheap compared with Vietnam. Vietnam has a lot of subsidies, and we cannot compare at that point. And if the Vietnam is going to have a 30% cut at the beginning, of course, we are going to hurt about that. The other thing is about short supply. In our point of view, we identify more than 20 products that is already included in the TPP short supply list that the CAFTA region is using a lot, and some of them are using with US raw materials, and we think it will be very important for us, that impact. The other program is the Earn Import Program. The direct CAFTA production of woven pants represent about 20% of our exports. And Vietnam, they are going to use third-party fabric to send to the United States duty-free. Then it will be very hard for us too. But more than expand in that issues that are our concerns, I want to mention what points we have to work on it. And we think we can make together to not only to stay afloat in the market, but regain leadership in the region and move forward. Certainly do not want to leave the issue of TPP on one side. We believe that it's so important to be aware of the act of implementation, especially with the issues of the custom verification and the verification of the origin of the product. The implementation law is the way that the United States is going to be sure that the things are in the agreement, the countries are using in that way. The other important thing for the region has to be trade facilitation. The people who speak before than me mentioned that we are very close to the market, I think, and I believe that is the most important thing for the region right now. But we have to work together with our governments to improve the competitiveness and make a reality that trade facilitation. The other thing is the strain the supply chain. I think we have to fall in love with the short supply mechanism. We have a good opportunity to be a flexible industry, and a lot of companies are so afraid to use the mechanism. We have the opportunity to include in the short supply list a lot of things that the region cannot supply in this moment. Maybe some of your companies think, okay, I can do that fabric or that yarn in the short term. But right now, a lot of things cannot be supplied for the region, and we have the opportunity with the short supply list that include a lot of things. And the opportunity and the good thing for the CAFTA region is with the short supply mechanism, you can put things inside, but you can take out things a lot. When you demonstrate that you have the capability, then you can take away the things. Then I think it's the most advantage for our region right now. And of course, the promotion, I think Bill mentioned very well, and I agree with you about the promotion. We have to be more aggressive to promote the industry, not like countries, like a region. It's a lot of customers that doesn't know about the industry and doesn't know about our advantages. Then we think we have worked together to promote the industry and let them know everybody that CAFTA stay here. And we have this year a very good opportunity because it's the 10th anniversary of the CAFTA agreement. And we want to focus in prepare a few activities, involve the political people and, of course, people from the industry to try to say, hey, hello, CAFTA region is here, and we are ready to still move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I have just a couple of quick questions following up, and then I'll open the floor. Bill and John, looking ahead, we've looked back at the 10th anniversary of CAFTA, what the TPP contains, the probabilities and possibilities of it being implemented in the short term. But some issues came up in your presentations and in Karen's that we are wondering about. What will the implementation legislation look like on those issues where you said that there's room for mischief? For example, tariff classification. I don't know, Bill, what is NCTO looking forward in the next few months and a year when this is being discussed in Congress? Are all concerns off the table, or are there some issues on state-owned enterprises or customs that you're looking to follow up on?
Okay, I'm going to answer that from my own personal view and not necessarily NCTO. First of all, as far as is it going to be passed in the U.S. Congress, I don't have a clue. I don't think anybody really knows. If it does, it'll probably be this year, probably late in the year in the lame duck session. If it doesn't happen, then my suspicion is it's going to be a couple of years probably before it gets taken up again. As far as what NCTO is concerned about and what I'm concerned about, I think the biggest concern I have, and I think it's a concern you should have here, is in the customs enforcement aspects of it, and is there going to be strong customs enforcement language, and is the U.S. Customs going to enforce the rule? Because, like it or not, people cheat, and people will try to take advantage of the rules. And they could be caught or they could not be caught, but I think there's more damage potentially to the CAFTA region and your business here because of people cheating on the rules than there are probably from the rules themselves. So, I mean, that's certainly one concern I have, and one thing I'm going to be looking for in the final language is how strongly are we going to enforce the custom rules, and how much resource is going to be put to customs to be able to do that. And I can tell you, as a company, Unify looks at that pretty frequently. I mean, we do mass balances all the time, how much product we send down to CAFTA, how much comes back up. And every once in a while, there's more coming up than we send down, and I've certainly got some concerns about that. And if it gets big enough, we'll certainly follow up on it. But I think that's something we all ought to be very vigilant about down here, because I think that's something that could have a major impact on us.
I find myself in rare disagreement with Bill. I don't think there's a chance in hell that the TPP will be adopted before the next president is inaugurated, particularly not in a lame duck session of Congress. This is the first presidential election year where trade agreements are a big issue, where all the candidates are talking about trade, and they all oppose the TPP so far. And even if Hillary Clinton turns around, and even if Hillary Clinton is the nominee, it will continue to be a red-hot election topic. And I don't think that Congress will want to touch TPP legislation with a 10-foot legislative pole anytime before the next president is elected. I just don't think it's going to happen. Now, Johanna said what might change in TPP. You know, there's some history for this. President Obama made some changes to a free trade agreement or two after he was elected, and we could expect that TPP will, I'm struggling with the word. I'm not sure likely is the right word, but there's a good chance that some pieces of TPP could be renegotiated by the next president, a rational president anyways. But I think that, interpret that as you will. But I think the biggest changes will be in areas other than textiles. I think it's going to be in agriculture. I think it's going to be in automobiles. I think it's going to be in certainly pharmaceutical products. There is a raging battle about whether the pharmaceutical product provisions in the TPP are consistent with the expectations of the U.S. pharmaceutical products industry. They would tell you, if they were here, that they feel that they got badly treated with last-minute changes in the negotiations that they say hurt them very badly. And I think the other TPP countries want TPP bad enough because there's a lot of benefit to all the TPP countries that they will be willing to consider some renegotiated pieces of the TPP. But I'm afraid it won't be in apparel. I mean in textiles, mainly because it's not controversial. All of the countries are pretty much in agreement with the textile provisions insofar as the TPP region is concerned. NCTO agrees with the free trade agreement, as in the past. Often they have not. So I'm not sure there's a lot of room for changes in the implementing legislation unless U.S. textile and apparel interests partner with their friends in the pharmaceutical industry or the automotive industry to say, hey, if you can get a change, we want one too. But I think that's an awfully heavy lift. Again, it's dangerous for lawyers to handicap future events, but as likely as I think the TPP will have some renegotiated pieces, I don't think the textile provisions are going to be renegotiated at all.
Thanks, John. I was talking more about not changes to the legal text or, to the substance, but you mentioned there was, some room for mischief. So I was just asking if in implementing legislation, was there a chance to clarify things that were not made clear that obviously does not imply a renegotiation or anything like that?
I'm afraid that, and perhaps mischief was too strong a word, but I think that reasonable people can differ about just what is and is not a dress shirt, for example, and that in the dress shirt feature there could be some uncertainty, and aggressive Vietnamese producers may push to the limit the dress shirt provision. I don't think that can be resolved by Congress. I mean, those uncertainties come from the text of the TPP itself. The Congress can do many things with the TPP, but they can't change its text. They have to vote up or down for or against the text, and they can't really change the rules of origin themselves. The other feature that suggests mischief, to return to that word, are those that were so well described by Bill about the possibility or the likelihood that people will cheat, that people will transship, and whether the customs features of the implementing legislation will be strong enough and flexible enough so that TPP rules are enforced. My own opinion, again, I probably disagree slightly with NCTO, is that there may not be as much cheating as NCTO alleges, but the quick answer to that is if they're not cheating, then they shouldn't mind the enforcement provisions, and I really have no answer to that. So if people want stronger enforcement provisions, they may very well get them.
Thank you. And then just the last question for Karen. Could you expand a little bit more on the work that Zacatecas has been doing on trade promotion or, partnering with organizations like the Inter-American Development Bank or with the U.S. industry to raise the level of awareness regarding the CAFTA-DR?
Yes, of course. We started trying to make an integrated plan to promote and steady promotion of the industry. We are going to be in Washington, D.C. next second week of April, and we want to, we already have meets with the IDB, International Development Bank. We are trying to present a proposal to do a lot of things to promote the industry. Maybe a trade show, because, as I mentioned, we are sure that we have to promote the industry, maybe in the United States, and we want to retake a project that is the trade database. We're still working with the U.S. government, like, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, and we made a database to include all the information of the companies of the region. And the idea is have a very friendly site to give the opportunity to the customers, go through that site and get more contacts for get programs, production programs. But at the end, we cannot complete the project. The database was made, but it was missed. Then we want to retake that project. That's some of the examples the things.
Thank you. We have a couple of minutes for questions from the audience. ¿Alguna pregunta?
My name is David Hobb from Texas. This question is addressed to Jonathan. Jonathan says you're a trade expert. How many free trade agreements are being negotiated as we speak in the region and in Asia? I know that TPP is the 800-pound gorilla right now, but how many free trade agreements are being negotiated as we're speaking?
Well, first of all, be suspicious of anyone who's billed as an expert. Second, I think I can't give you a precise number, but there are a number of free trade agreements in various stages of negotiation and implementation all over the Americas. Mexico has been particularly aggressive about implementing free trade agreements with many, many more countries than the United States has. There are certainly interests in opening free trade and preference programs between various regions in the Americas and Europe. And certainly there are opportunities for Central America, party to many of those agreements, for garment exports, particularly to Europe and other parts of the world, and among each other. Many of the America's markets outside the United States have growing consumer apparel markets that these other preference programs and free trade agreements may serve. So you're right to suggest, and I think you implied in your question, that we would probably be narrow-minded to focus our attention only on exports from Central America to the United States. There's a lot of other preferential programs, and there are a lot of other opportunities in truly global trade with other regions. But I have to say, or repeat, that by far the most interesting of the presently negotiated free trade agreements, beyond TPP, of course, is the RCEP, the Regional, Comprehensive Economic Partnership. I think that's what the acronym stands for. That includes the ASEAN countries in Asia and India and China, and does not include the United States. Those markets, particularly in India and China, and the production venues in all of those states have or offer businesses some remarkable growth opportunities and intra-Asian trade opportunities that agreement, when and if it's implemented, will facilitate. And to the extent that the United States is not a partner to that agreement, it hasn't been invited to join, and to the extent that the United States does not adopt TPP, that would be a disappointment to, I think, the United States government, certainly under at least the Obama administration, which considered pivoting attention to the Asian market as a trade administration legacy of the Obama administration. If we don't get TPP and if RCEP is implemented, The United States could truly be left on the sidelines in Asian trade, and in many people's views, including my own, for what it's worth, it would be a big setback for United States trade policy.
Hi, my name is Jose Torres. I come from the Dominican Republic. I think we all agree TPP will hurt CAFTA, at least to a certain extent. So my question is to Bill and Jonathan, do you think that maybe through the implementation legislation, or maybe to some administrative actions, we could get some mitigation measures or dispositions for the region, for the CAFTA region? And of course, with the no objection of the industry.
All right. The short answer, uncharacteristic of John Fee, is no. No, I don't think that in the implementation or administration of TPP that you can mitigate the effect of its origin rules or its other features, because they're in the text, and the United States is obligated to respect and enforce them. So unless the TPP were renegotiated, so its very terms were changed, no, I don't think that there's really the opportunity to mitigate, to use your word, the effect of TPP to the extent that it allows Vietnam and other TPP states to compete with the textile and apparel industry in the CAFTA region.
Yeah, but I'm not referring through TPP. I'm referring maybe through the willingness of the administration or the willingness of...
What? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I'm not talking to get mitigation measures within TPP. I'm talking to get mitigation pressures due to the willingness of the administration of not hurting our economies, or the willingness of Congress of not hurting FTA partners.
Well, I guess the big giant mitigation would be to persuade the Congress not to adopt TPP at all. That'd be a big step. But beyond that, Bill, do you see anything further? I mean, the whole point of the TPP is that it's transparent, it's fair, it's easily applied, everybody understands it, and every partner in the TPP is committed to respect its terms. To game TPP somehow, or CAFTA, to effectively influence its effect, I don't think that can be done. If I understood the question, do you have it?
Yeah, I'm not sure this answers the question either, but I think what you're asking is there a possibility the administration may try to do something in addition to what's already in the text to try to help protect the industry and the economies here in Central America? And I think first and foremost, because of the way we, the textile industry in the U.S., approach this, I think the administration feels that they've done a lot to try to protect the industry down here. And protect's a bad word. I don't want to say, make it sound like protectionism. It's really, I think the administration feels like they've done a lot to give this region the opportunity and the time to adapt to what TPP is really going to mean. So I think if you ask the administration that question you just asked, that the way I interpret it, they would say, well, yeah, we've done a lot and we've done all we're going to do to try to help protect this industry. So, I mean, that's just my opinion on that.
¿Alguien más? Sí. Ok, allá atrás, si le pueden pasar el micrófono.
Yes, I have a question. We have seen some countries that want to join in the future, also the TPP, even countries from the CAFTA region. So my question is, how do you see this? Is this like a benefit for the region to join in the future also the TPP?
You or me?
Go ahead.
TPP certainly could be joined by other partners, and indeed there was talk. I could be wrong, but didn't Costa Rica seek to participate in TPP? I think so. And ultimately, I think the present members of TPP said, wait a minute, hold the phone, let's get our act together before we invite more members. The one that would be fascinating to me would be Korea. Because of Korea's investment and connection with the some of the CAFTA countries and with other TPP countries, particularly Vietnam. I think it would be really interesting if Korea came into play with TPP. The other thing I wish would happen, but it never will, is for the United States and other countries to consider cumulation among some of the free trade agreement regions. You know what that is? Could we make an accumulation arrangement between, let's say, Korea and one or more of the Central American countries so that you could use Korean material as though it were originating material to meet the origin rules in CAFTA and vice versa in Korea. You know, we have a teeny tiny step toward that in the teeny tiny accumulation provision that allows Mexican inputs to be treated that way under CAFTA. And that to me would be just as interesting as other people joining the TPP. I'd almost ask a question in return. Who are you worried about joining the TPP? Are you worried that there's another Vietnam out there waiting in the wings that'll make it even worse from your perspective?
No, I'm just let's see, there are some countries like Honduras, they're thinking about joining the TPP in the future or trying to get in the TPP. So my question is it a benefit that the CAFTA region stays together as a CAFTA agreement, or that in the future that everyone joins the TPP and the CAFTA gets destroyed? Or
oh gosh, yeah.
Oh yeah, put her over here. Sure. I can make one comment on that, I guess. And just from Unifi's standpoint, certainly we make investment decisions looking 5-10 years down the road. And if you told me that all the CAFTA countries were going to become part of TPP 5 years from now, that may change the way I view our investments. I mean, I may choose to invest in Vietnam rather than invest again in El Salvador under, two different scenarios. So I don't know if it's good or bad. I know it will change the way many companies view their investment. And I know my view now is that CAFTA is going to stay as it is. It's going to be competitive, and we'll probably continue to invest in Central America. If it was to become part of TPP, I may change. I don't know if I would, but I may change those investment decisions potentially, looking down the road.
Yeah, your question really is unsettling to me. I frankly hadn't thought about it before, but my impression, and maybe I'm naive, is that CAFTA, Central America, CAFTA countries are a strong, viable, sensible, free trade area that enjoys unique relationships with the United States beyond simple proximity. And I think that, but for the opportunity the TPP membership might allow Honduras, let's say, to sell garments into the Japanese market or other TPP members' markets, my impression is that CAFTA is strong, viable, long-lasting, and sensible, and that if we were to bet and make, the investment decisions that you have to make that I don't have to make, my bet would be that in another 10 years, CAFTA will still be here going strong as it is today.
And I just want to add another comment. The textile and apparel sector always said in everywhere that we are the biggest winners with the CAFTA agreement because we really made an integration between the Central American countries. And it's true, a lot of companies from here using fabric from Guatemala, or a lot of companies in Nicaragua using fabrics or raw materials from El Salvador. And I cannot imagine if that integration is going to break. I don't know. And of course, Costa Rica was the first that said that would like to join TPP, then Honduras, and the last weeks I read in the news that Nicaragua start consultation inside the country to join TPP, but I don't know, for our sector doesn't have means if some of the country will be part of TPP. For other sector, I don't know, maybe.
Patty, so we close it off. There was one more question, but we're gonna have to leave it for the hallway. I'm sorry. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much for all your insights and coming down.